Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a pleasure to be with you in this distinguished symposium. This is Sarah Mitkees, an EdD candidate at University College London.
And this is Dina Odessy, a DPhil researcher in the University of Oxford.
So today, along with my colleague Dina Odessy, we will be presenting the Facilitator as Muraby, exploring the teacher-student relationship in light of a holistic learner experience framework in an Islamic university in Egypt. So we will be embarking on a research journey through the reflections of a university professor and the reflections of his students. The outline of our presentation today will be looking at this new learner experience framework, first framework, and humanizing learning, the holistic view of the learner, taking a glimpse of the literature review, methodology, findings, and ending by the conclusion. So central to first framework is learner experience. As we can see here on the screen, how learner experience influences both design and facilitation, moving from content curriculum to learner experience design. And on the other hand side, moving from lecturing to teaching to learner experience facilitation. First framework is built on top of learner experience, providing a learner experience that is both active and deep, and they go hand in hand together, where the active aspect involves engagement, participation, involvement, motivation, attention, the social aspect, interaction, and the deep aspect involves the whole human, understanding, deep meaning, transformation, application, and reflections. First framework is grounded on the work of many educators. For example, the work of John Dewey, Experience and Education, Experiential Learning, the work of Michael Fullan, his new pedagogies for deep learning, among many others. So just to get a closer look about what first framework is. First framework is comprised of 5 main domains, focusing on learner behaviors, interacting within positive group dynamics, reviewing activities, sequencing within the session flow, transforming learning into performance. It's a framework that mobilizes action through key principles, where each of these domains encompasses 3 main principles. But for the sake of the time of our presentation, I'll just give you a glimpse of what each stands for. So F stands for focusing on each individual learner's needs while trusting the learner and what he or she brings to the learning experience, interacting within positive group dynamics, ensuring a positive safe environment within the group learning process, or reviewing the learning activities, where learning happens through reflection after activities in active deep experiential learning, sequencing the learning activities to engage and motivate the learner. And finally, T stands for transforming learning into action through application. So throughout our study, we will look at how experiencing and living first framework in a learning journey, the professor is able looking at how the professor is able to bring this into his teaching setting, how first framework has the potential to humanize the education machine, humanizing the education journey, to reclaim back what it means to have a real teacher-student interaction, teacher-student relationship, reclaiming the role of tarbiyah and the murabi back again. Just a quick glimpse over the literature, looking at the holistic view of the learner from an Islamic viewpoint that regards education as one that involves the human being from a holistic perspective, rationally, spiritually, and socially, and is based on the very notion of tawheed, oneness in Islam. Imam al-Ghazali describes the teacher as one that would advise students generously, look at the desires and interests of the learner, and be patient, kind, friendly, and gentle. Furthermore, Imam al-Ghazali describes the relationship between the teacher and student as one that is like a parent-child relationship, with an emphasis on the support and development of the learners. Sayyid Hussein Nasr highlights the key role the teacher plays. Being a murabbi encompasses a sense of compassion and generosity. This is portrayed in teaching students about things that matter in life. He adds that educational systems must begin with the training of the teacher as both mu'allim and murabbi, which we will look at further with Dina exploring our research study.
So we have selected for this case study a fourth-year university course on maxims of jurisprudence in an Islamic university in Egypt, where the professor undertook the first framework professional development journey and attempted to implement it. Our main research question in the study is, how was first framework transforming the learner experience in a traditional university setting and impacting the teacher-student relationship? To address this question, the research adopts a mixed methods approach by employing semi-structured interviews, surveys, and observation of pre-recorded videos of the lectures. Convenience sampling was opted to recruit students who showed interest in participating. And through thematic coding and analysis, a number of findings were generated. But for ethical consideration, all names were anonymized to guarantee the confidentiality and safety of the participants. And now let us share with you some of the main research findings. First of all, the emergence of critical, reciprocal dialogue and shura, or consultation. First presented implementable tools and research-based practices that gradually transformed the lecture room to a dialogic space. The data revealed how emerging practices such as regularly consulting the students and creating satisfaction surveys, for example, affected the dynamics of power and paved the way forward for reciprocal dialogue. Testing the untried waters, the learners became gradually more engaged, and it was perceptible by the end of the course that they seemed to have a greater sense of ownership and displayed agency in a more visible manner. They became more communicative, vocal, and outspoken, no longer feeling intimidated from the professor, henceforward referred to as Professor Ahmed. First and foremost, a Muraby should not only incorporate shura and reciprocal dialogue as a cornerstone practice, but also be conscious of how the smallest hub-based changes can create ripples of empowerment. Since many educators are still caught in the grips of the yawning space that separates research from practice, this program could be incorporated by educators who are interested in developing an Islamic critical pedagogy that restores the balance of the disrupted power relations in postmodern and neo-colonial education institutions. Now, moving on to the second finding, which is about detyrannizing and humanizing the learning journey. The second finding of this research is related to the impact of FIRST as a professional development journey that created a paradigm shift towards a more humanized version of the learner. Professor Ahmed confessed to us in a self-reproaching honesty how he re-envisioned the students, describing that, quote, he did not have mercy upon any student who did not respond to his questions correctly, and there was no opportunity for anyone to talk, unquote. He candidly claimed that his tyranny was perceptible in his old lectures, as he was used to teaching that way for the last 20 years. However, it seems that the new humanized way of learning was also unmistakable by the students, as one of them poignantly proclaimed, the student in this course is treated as if he was a human being. And those two simple conjunctions put together, as if, speak volumes. Indeed, the data revealed some fluctuations that took place as Professor Ahmed oscillated back and forth between repressive and empowering practices. And as he described, change is not a button that one would press to transform, but rather a gradual process, highlighting that he plans to take into consideration the student's emotional and psychological state. Our findings indicate that the avalanche buildup of moments that geared towards what we call a de-tyrannizing pedagogy involved primarily an interplay of the heart, soul, and mind. We argue that upholding this holistic and humanized vision is one of the main pillars that enable educators to create transformative learning experience. And this brings us to the third finding, the Muraby and the pedagogy of love as a prerequisite to transformative education. Now, emotions have a powerful impact in mobilizing students' agency, focus, and interest. And the association between emotions and academic achievement was a recurrent theme, as some of the student codes demonstrate. One student directly rationalized the importance of love and mutual respect and said that if students love the professor, they would be keen to attend and focus during the lecture. Words such as love, respect, advice were repeated among others, and it was not surprising that the students chose such values as the pivotal defining characteristics that should be available in any professor. Reflecting on the change he experienced after the first journey, Professor Ahmed said that he was trying to become a better insan, or human being, trying to humanize his instruction practices through the virtues of empathy and compassion. He said, quote, faith is the emotional part that, if penetrates the heart, transforms the human being. And learning goals are connected to the emotional aspect because emotions are the basis for any mobilization. And this has been the message of the prophets to the people. It was built upon emotions and feelings, unquote. Consciously trying to reclaim the bygone role of the Muraby, he started to capitalize upon bygone understandings in classical Islamic educational thought, which he said comprised rich literature about the relationship between the teacher and the students and the related etiquettes of behavior as well. By using other first strategies, such as providing personalized feedback, creating a humorous environment, he was able to tap into the power of what we like to call hard-based learning. And we argue that it is only by engaging the whole learner that deep active learning could ever occur. Now, in the slide, we end with the following Quranic verse, which serves as a lasting reminder of which Muslim educators should always be mindful. It is out of Allah's mercy that you, O Prophet, have been lenient with them. Had you been cruel or hard-hearted, they would have certainly abandoned you. So pardon them, ask Allah's forgiveness for them, and consult with them in conducting matters. Surah Al-Imran. The centrality of merciful compassion and love in both Quranic and prophetic pedagogy should be hence brought back again to the forefront of the educational discourse. Muslim educators need professional development programs that lead them to embark upon a journey of spiritual transformation, where they explore how the Muraby is a vicegerent of the Rabb, and a Rabb is Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Al-Karim, Ar-Rashid, Al-Sabur, the most merciful, the most compassionate, the most benevolent, the guide, and the most patient. It is these glorious attributes of Allah that need to be recalled and remembered in the very sacred journey of education and tarbiyah. Thank you very much for your patient listening, and we look forward to communicating with anyone who's interested in knowing more about this research. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Linda Fogarty, and I'm very happy to be here today. I am the Director of Measurement, Evaluation, Research, and Learning at the International Youth Foundation. That's headquartered in Baltimore. I work out of California, and I'm glad to be here also on behalf of my colleague Narmeen Fayyaleh, who is the Senior Specialist Institutional Capacity Strengthening in our office in Palestine. Narmeen can't be with us today because she's on maternity leave, but I'm very happy to be here for the two of us to talk to you today about transforming vocational education and training for women in Palestine. Today, I'll be describing the effects of an intervention to work with education and vocational training systems to integrate life skills training and provide career guidance with special focus on women to improve employment opportunities in Palestine, West Bank, and Gaza. This work was funded by the Caterpillar Foundation. I want to go over the questions that we had for this research and this study. First, can life skills be integrated into vocational and training centers in West Bank and Gaza? Second, do VTC students receiving life skills trainings report improved life skills after the training? And then finally, do students have expanded understanding of professional choices open to them, particularly gender non-traditional choices after receiving career guidance? I wanted to talk to you a little bit about unemployment in Palestine. You can see here unemployment is quite high, 23% unemployment rate in West Bank and 63% in Gaza. Among women, it's much higher at 63% than for men, but also high for men at 31%. And some of the reasons that unemployment is so high is that young people are inadequately prepared to meet the demands of the labor market. And that's in terms of both technical skills and life skills. So vocational training centers have a large role to play here. Right now, though, there's a fairly large current gender gap between those enrolled in vocational training centers, with 69% of those enrolled being men versus 31% being women. In vocational training centers, there's a low availability of career guidance and a lack of attention to gender norms. We know that there's good evidence that life skills benefits youth. We know that life skills training reduces violence, teenage pregnancy, and marriage. It reduces drug use and participation in illegal activities. We also know from our own research at the International Youth Foundation that greater life skills leads to greater employment, higher wages, stronger educational outcomes, improved self-confidence, resilience, and optimism. I wanted to present to you this life skills framework that we use at International Youth Foundation. It has 4 domains: higher order thinking skills that includes, for example, creativity and innovation, problem solving. The second domain is interpersonal skills, which includes communication, teamwork, and the third domain is community mindset. That includes things, for example, empathy, responsibility, and then finally positive mindset, which is, for example, self-confidence, self-management, resilience. We use this life skills framework at IYF to support all of the work that we do in this area. This project, the Equip Youth program, was funded by Caterpillar Foundation. It was a 5-year project for the purpose of aligning vocational training center trainings and labor market needs. In that work, we worked very closely with the Ministry of Labor to integrate life skills and career guidance into the standard curricula by equipping teachers and staff with knowledge, skills, and attitudes. So we taught teachers, we worked on the logistics, we trained the staff to make sure that they understood the framework around life skills, and they in turn, of course, trained students. The overall goal, again, was to bridge gaps in training provided by VTCs and the current labor market requirements by providing life skills, career guidance to achieve a sustainable environment for youth employability. In that work, we worked in 16 TVETs in Gaza and West Bank and trained 81 teachers, reaching 1,100 students. Those students were ranging in the ages of 16 to 30, and 29% of them were women. Part of the intervention was also holding gender awareness workshops, and we held 53 of those. I wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the interventions that we used to influence culture. We created posters and videos like the one that you see up here that had messages in them to support women's choice in the workplace and in vocational training. So for example, this one: as girls, we face many challenges while joining various specializations, especially in vocational training centers, due to the societal view of girls' enrollment in VTCs. I'd like to send a message to all girls to choose their majors based on their passions, desires, and ambitions. So these were the sorts of messages that we provided in the posters and in the videos to community members and to students. In addition, there was an attempt to influence the learning culture itself. So for example, you can see here from the director of the YMCA, the shortest way to develop societies is to involve men and women equally. Thus, we created an atmosphere of intimacy within the center. As well, we created educational programs that enhance and encourage the participation of women in the labor market. Those programs are always in constant development and change. So that was on the intervention side. Getting to the methods of the study that we used, we had qualitative and quantitative data. First, for qualitative, we interviewed teachers and administrators and also students. We had a quantitative survey that we used for students, a subset of students that we worked with, and that was a life skills survey with a sample of students. And then finally, we talked to students after the intervention to find out some of the outcomes of what had happened to them after the intervention. So that was a retrospective survey with a sample of students. I'm going to start with the systems change, some of the systems change results that we found. I think probably the most important finding was that, for example, in Gaza, in the Vocational Training Center, administration officially integrated a comprehensive course into their program plans called Professional Culture, which included life skills and career guidance. This professional culture course will be given to all students of Gaza VTCs. It's a requirement for graduation now. So this course now has the potential to reach tens of thousands of young women and men in the future. So it can be obviously sustained and scaled. On the student side, we talked to 64 students, 47 of them female, 17 male, most of whom were living in the city. And we used this 11-item life skills assessment scale. You can see the scales items listed here, starting with I have overall personal skills, communication skills, creativity skills, teamwork skills, technical skills. I understand expectations of working well with others, job readiness skills, conflict resolution and problem solving. I believe I have a good future, can contribute to society, and have opportunities to achieve career goals. So these were items that were aligned with our IYF's life skills framework and reflected the modules in the life skills training. We found that all 11 items improved 30 percentage points or more, and that 6 items changed 50 percentage points or more. Those are bolded here. You can see them, such as the overall personal skills, creativity skills, expectations of working well, having a good future. But more importantly, I think, our outcomes survey found that 48% of program graduates secured a job or an internship. So that was a very positive finding. On the qualitative side, I wanted to share a couple of quotes with you. This is a student from the YMCA who said, I always hear, why did you join the vocational training sector while there are many other available specializations at the university you could join? Today, and through my experience at the vocational field, I'm here to tell you I was able to discover myself, acquire new skills, and develop my capacity. Now I'm sure I can compete in the labor market. One more quote from students. When you believe in yourself, when you follow your passion, and when you have extraordinary opportunities to learn new skills like the ones I've learned from the PTS courses, you can easily challenge the status quo and break the boundaries of what you've been told must be. I wanted to also share one quote from a vocational training director. There are some positive indicators that reflect a social change in the perceptions of people toward vocational training, especially women's participation in non-traditional programs through vocational training centers. I believe that's the willingness of the young women with the support of their families to join non-traditional programs and professions. So in conclusion, we found for our first research question, can life skills be integrated into vocational training centers in West Bank and Gaza? We found yes, life skills and career guidance can be integrated into those vocational training centers. Our second question, do VTC students receiving life skills training report improved life skills after the training? That one too, we were able to answer yes to. Doing so increases students' perceived life skills and also their hopes for the future and other dimensions. On the third question, do students have expanded understanding of professional choices open to them, particularly gender non-traditional choices after receiving career guidance? Our results are less confirming. We found anecdotal evidence that suggests that after career guidance, some female students have greater understanding of and access to non-traditional professional choices. But I think we need to look at this a little bit further. We weren't able to demonstrate that in terms of how the choices that women make. So that's something that we really need to follow up on. Luckily, we will be doing some more work in Palestine, so we'll be continuing to do this work and look forward to supporting this work into the future. So thank you very much for your time.
Good day, everyone. My name is Şahnoza Kayadibi. I am a PhD candidate at Karabük University in Turkey. I am delighted to present in this conference. Today, I am going to talk about Turkey as popular hub for higher education learning among Muslim countries, challenges and opportunities for international students. There are many higher education institutions offering different programs in different parts of the world by Muslim countries such as Malaysia, Indonesia, Brunei, Qatar, and many more. However, Turkey became popular hub for the past years because it's one of the few countries that offers full scholarship for international students, as it's mentioned by Aras and Muhammad 2019. It's also important to mention that Turkey is among the few countries offering free education for locals. Indeed, Turkish scholarships, those who applied for this program, approximately 165,000 applications received from 178 countries from different parts of the world for 2022. Everyone, regardless of race and age, have the right to be educated at higher education institutions. Educated nations promote a better social, economic, and technological contributions for government overall development. Higher education plays an important role by promoting knowledge sharing, conducting research, and it also nurtures students with important skills that needed to meet labor markets. It's remarkable that Turkey is one of the popular destinations for international students compared to other Muslim countries. Why? Because it offers scholarship without any return from the student side. We can see in some other countries, they offer scholarship, but at the end, students need to work and pay back the scholarship. The interesting part is Turkish scholarship, government scholarship offers for the free of cost. They don't expect any return from international students. They cover all fees, tuition fees, and their daily expenses, and all the expenses is covered by this scholarship. It offers higher education programs significantly at lower cost for international students. For example, if students couldn't get the scholarship, they can afford by their own. The lower income people also can come to Turkey and study. It's at a affordable cost. For example, in capital cities, it might be much more higher expenses, but other cities, it's much more cheaper, the education. Affordable university tuition fees also attracting the students from all over the world. This is a good opportunity for international students to study in Turkey. However, there are challenges also faced by students in continuing higher education studies in Turkey. They even leave the university unwillingly due to the increased cost of education fees as a result of global financial crisis. Another challenge for international students is, even though they got a scholarship, it can be language because they have to learn Turkish language, since many courses are offered in Turkish language. Once they come to Turkey, they have to improve their Turkish language. Though there are many courses they offer in English. Indeed, Turkish government allocates enormous amount of spending on education. Essentially, this study aims to investigate the universities in the eyes of international students, as well as this research also wants to find out significant antecedents related to this study. According to Jeffrey, 2013, Turkey had increased investments and the introduction of new information technologies in the classrooms. The latest technological advancements, known as augmented reality, also utilized in education system in Turkey. It can be observed augmented reality in many education institutions. This makes student life easier to learn and exchange knowledge between students. The earliest research on augmented reality in the context of Turkish education had been done by İliç and Yildirim in 2016. This research especially is important because it wants to learn more about the students' social life, how technology affecting their life. The students' social life declined through the acceptance of technological tools and applications. In the learning process, technology is becoming an integral part of education system. With that respect, does students' social life decline through technology-embedded education? It's a challenging question to answer, and thus this study aims to identify further challenges and opportunities for international students in Turkey. This study, it's important to mention that framework of this study includes the integration of social identity theory and technology acceptance model. It's important to mention that this research is still an ongoing process. For the methodological part, the constructs of this study include emotional intelligence, academic excellence, religiosity, self-efficacy, reciprocity, university identity, and acceptability of technology. The research uses mixed methods to collect the data. In order to test the model, data will be collected from various universities in Turkey, as this is the research important part, because we are using mixed method. For the qualitative part, we are going to use narrative approach. We will interview students who are selected from different universities in Turkey. And also for the quantitative part of the research, population is equals to 200,000 international students, and from this sample size is chosen equal to be 250. This is chosen based on convenient sampling because it's easy and time-saving technique. This study makes theoretical as well as managerial contribution in the context of higher education in Turkey. In a conclusion, higher education can be regarded as a high level or specialized form of human capital, the contribution of which to economic growth is very significant. Thus, higher education is an important form of investment in human capital. It's rightly regarded as engine of development in New World economy. Castell's 1994, it's mentioned by him. So, thank you very much for your attention. See you again.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. It's a great pleasure to be with you today and share some moments which I hope will be of interest to you all. The title of my presentation is Teacher Training in Algeria, Reality and Practice. I'm Dr. Amel Benyahia from the Teacher Education School, AEMS Assia Djebar, Constantine, Algeria. I will start first by giving you the outline of my presentation. So I will start with a brief introduction, then a statement of the aims and research questions. Then I will proceed with a short review of literature, followed by a presentation of the method and setting of the study, then a discussion of the major findings, and finally conclude with some recommendations before the conclusion. As an introduction, we all know that teacher education is gaining an increasing importance all over the world. The demands for improved quality of teaching and learning have made issues about teacher training or development a priority for educators, researchers, and policymakers. Aims of the study. The present study aims at first, shedding light on the Algerian teacher training framework, second, investigating the effectiveness of the practicum in developing trainees' teaching skills, and third, investigating challenges and suggesting solutions. On the basis of these aims, three main questions are raised. To what extent does the Algerian traineeship program promote pre-service teachers' teaching skills? What are the gains of the training from the trainees' perspectives? And what challenges and what possibilities are available? Review of literature. I will start first by defining two major concepts related to teacher training, which are training and development. According to Freeman, 1982, the term training focuses on the teaching skills. For example, how to plan and present a lesson in vocabulary, grammar, how to do a warm-up or evaluation of the lesson, etc. Whereas the term development focuses on the teacher himself, mainly on his or her personal and professional growth, like developing his reflection, examination, and change. A major difference is that training targets immediate concerns, whereas development deals with long-term concerns. The importance of the training or the practicum has been emphasized by many authors and researchers like Orchard and Winch, who argued that all teachers need professional training professional educational training, which consists of a planned intervention which prepares them for the demands of their chosen profession. Furthermore, Orchard and Winch suggested a model of teacher education based on both academic and professional training. The suggested model consists of two main parts or phases: a 9-month postgraduate certificate in education or 3-year BA with qualified teacher status program resulting in initial licensure. And second phase, a 2-year higher grade apprenticeship resulting in full licensure at master's level. Nguyen, 2017, on his part, emphasized the importance of the practicum, which according to him offers to the trainees an authentic setting in which they can observe and work with real students, teachers, and current curricula. Despite the great importance and advantages of the practicum, pre-service teachers may be faced with some challenges as described by Lunenberg et al. And one of these challenges is learning like a student and teaching like a teacher. This means that trainees are in mid-position, they feel and learn like students, but they have to act as teachers. Another challenge, according to Lunenberg et al., is the multidimensional classroom and teacher orientation perspective. Because it's their first experience teaching in real classrooms, pre-service teachers may notice that the classroom or teaching itself is quite different from what they had experienced as students. The third challenge is related to knowledge transfer, i.e., difficulties in connecting theory or with practice. Now I move to the description of the method and setting of the present study. The study took place at the English department at the Teacher Education School ENS Assia Djebar Constantine. ENS stands for the French name Ecole Normale Supérieure, and ENS Assia Djebar is one of the biggest teacher education schools in Algeria, situated in the eastern part of the country. The population of the study includes pre-service teachers during the 2020-2021 academic year, and the total number is 110. Whereas the tool of data collection consists of a corpus analysis of 55 trainee reports written by the trainees at the end of their practicum. As an overview of teacher education in Algeria, pre-service teachers receive two kinds of training: an academic training consisting of 8 or 10 semesters according to the students or a future teacher's profile. And during this academic training, ENS students receive different courses in linguistics, culture, and pedagogy. In addition to the practicum, which takes place during the last year of training and lasts for 9 to 10 weeks, where students practice teaching in real classroom setting. The Algerian practicum model is a collaborative work between three main institutions. On both sides, we have the ENS or the home institution and middle and high schools or the host institutions. At the middle, we have the National Education Regional Office, which facilitates the distribution and orientation of the trainees to their training schools. Moreover, ENS trainees or pre-service teachers are guided by supervisors who are ENS teacher educators and teacher mentors who are generally middle or high school teachers with a long experience in teaching. The practicum goes through three main steps. An observation phase of 2 to 3 weeks where the trainees observe the school at first, generally during their first visit to the school, and then observation of classroom activities. In doing so, the trainees are provided with an observation grid which they have to fill out during their observation sessions. The second phase is the alternate phase, and here the trainees start teaching parts of lessons in alternation with the training teacher or with another trainee. Well, I have to mention here that trainees are divided into teams of 3 to 4 members who work with the same supervisor and mentor. The final step is the full-time training, which generally lasts up to 4 weeks, where students or student teachers take full responsibility of teaching different classes at their training institutions. At the end of the practicum, pre-service teachers prepare 2 documents, a training report of about 2,000 words, including a description of their training experience over the 3 stages. These reports are corrected and evaluated by the supervisors and then submitted to the department. And the second document is a training copybook, which includes all lesson plans or teaching cards prepared during the different phases of the training. These copybooks are evaluated by the supervisor, though in designing their lesson plans, trainees are guided by their mentors, but the final evaluation is done by the supervisor. These copybooks are formally signed by the training school and by the English department, and then it's not submitted like the report, it is kept by the trainee. The evaluation of the practicum is done by both supervisors and mentors. The supervisor's score includes sub-scores related to report, training, copybook, and another sub-score for seriousness and professionalism. The mentor's score, on the other hand, evaluates the trainee's teaching performance in the classroom. The findings now. As far as the first and second research questions about the effectiveness of the practicum and its different gains according to what the trainees have mentioned in their training reports, the practicum seems to be a successful experience for the majority of trainees who indicated that the practicum has helped them improve their teaching skills in relation to the preparation of teaching cards, presentation of lessons, interaction with learners, and developing their time and classroom management skills. In addition, the training helped them much theory or theoretical knowledge, which they acquired along the academic training, with practice inside the classroom. It also helped them discover their strong and weak points, develop their self-confidence, mainly in facing learners and speaking in front of an audience. And finally, the practicum was an opportunity for them to interact with the social environment of their schools, including administrative and teaching staff, parents as well. At the same time, trainees have reported some challenges which they faced during the practicum. So they said that the training was time-consuming and tiring at the same time. So taking the teaching responsibility on their shoulders was not an easy task. They also face problems in keeping a balance between their roles as teachers and students at the same time. Insufficient training period was another challenge for them, especially in the observation phase, because the observation phase, which lasts only 2 weeks. And other challenges include learners' low level of proficiency in English. They often resort to using their native language Also, the lack of interest and disruptive behavior sometimes. Trainees have also faced some difficulties in adapting textbook materials to make them more interesting and suitable to the learner's level of proficiency. Lack of financial resources because sometimes they resort to printing and purchasing some teaching tools. And cooperative mentors was another challenge, though this has been mentioned by only few trainees who reported that their mentors were not helpful. They gave them little or no feedback about their presentations. Being with such kind of mentors may be the result of lack of coordination between the three institutions involved in the training, because the mentors sometimes are not ready or willing to receive trainees. Finally, there is the problem of remote schools, which put the trainees in a real challenge reaching their schools in the appropriate time. As recommendations, the trainees suggested the following: to extend the training period, to lay more focus on modules which develop their knowledge of psychological and pedagogical issues, though these courses are already there, but according to trainees, they need more about them. To be well prepared for their practicum, and this problem happened mainly during the pandemic crisis, where trainees received little preparation or explanation of the different aspects of the training before going to the host schools. And last, trainees asked for more and better communication between learners and the training schools in order to avoid any problems. As a conclusion, I can say that the practicum has helped the trainees to improve their performance and perception of the training experience as a whole, despite some challenges, of course. I would love to end with some confessions from the trainees themselves. One of them said, "The experience brought to us maturity and clarity of vision about our future." Another trainee said, "The training taught us what 4 years of theoretical knowledge could not do." So though this may raise an important question about the effectiveness of their theoretical or academic training, which can be investigated in a further study, nonetheless, it points to the positive impact of the practicum on the trainees' experience as a whole. This is the end of my presentation. I close with a list of references and my email if you want to ask me any questions. And thank you for your kind attention.
Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie Vinsky Ibrahim. I am a PhD candidate in the International Education Program at the University of Maryland. Today, I will be giving an overview of my in-progress research study, which is focused on the experiences of female graduate students from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia at U.S. higher education institutions. Here's a quick overview of what I will be covering in this presentation. First, I will share a brief introduction, and then next, an overview of my literature review and theoretical perspectives. I will give a very brief summary of my research approach, including my methodology and methods, and share a few very, very preliminary findings. As this research continues to be in progress, I will share some very tentative conclusions, and then of course, I will open myself up to questions and feedback and will provide my information for communication. To start off, I feel it's important to introduce myself and share a bit about my background and my positionality as it relates to my research and my interaction with my participants. I identify as a woman, a mother, and a white American of European ethnic heritage. I identify as agnostic and spiritual, but I do not personally identify with any organized religion. I consider myself to be a lifelong educator, and my entire career has included teaching, advising, and student support in student support responsibilities and in one form or another at the higher education level. I'm a native English speaker with some basic knowledge of Arabic, although I am far from fluent, so my research is conducted in English. My familiarity with Arabic comes from my time living in Morocco and teaching English there at a public university in the major city of Casablanca. This experience fostered my regional interest in North Africa and the Middle East, and my research focus on the educational experiences of women in Muslim societies. My research interest has now evolved to focus specifically on the educational experiences of Saudi Arabian women, particularly Saudi women who leave the kingdom to study abroad for graduate or professional education, and particularly the experience of Saudi women who are studying at US higher education institutions. Hence, my primary research question is, how do Saudi Arabian women who studied abroad or are studying abroad in the US currently, how do they conceptualize or perceive the impact of their experience? Some of my sub-questions attempt to investigate women's experiences in the Saudi education system prior to studying abroad, the female students' experiences at US higher education institutions, and how their experiences may have impacted them or may be impacting them educationally, politically, and economically. My literature review captures a lot of sensitizing information about the context of Saudi Arabia in general. And I also do an in-depth overview of education and educational policies and practices in Saudi Arabia, with a particular emphasis on higher education. I've done some in-depth research on Saudi Arabia's efforts to internationalize its structures of higher education. Many of you may be familiar with two notable efforts begun in the early 2000s. First, the founding of the King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, sometimes referred to as KAUST, and also the kingdom's large-scale overseas scholarship program, which was formerly known as CASP, or the King Abdullah Scholarship Program. And that program facilitated the study abroad and graduate education for all of the women who participated in my study. My literature review also covers the status of women in Saudi Arabia, legally, politically, socially, and economically, with special emphasis on the kingdom's infamous guardianship system. I've also included two photos here of some activists, women's rights activists that were in recent years arrested by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for their activism around the women's right to drive movement in Saudi Arabia. And of course, I use the literature review as an opportunity to focus on the context of my specific study, which is the experiences of female Saudi students in the US. There are plenty of popular sources like news articles and blog posts that document the lives of Saudi students in the US, as well as a handful of previous academic studies that have explored their experiences, although very few focus on Saudi women specifically. Most of them are focused on women and men together or on men only. This slide and the next briefly share my methodology and methods. I'm utilizing a fully qualitative methodological approach, specifically case study design. Data has been collected from 5 female graduate students thus far, and 4 additional participants are anticipated. The primary means of data collection is person-to-person interviews, two interviews with each participant, following a semi-structured interview protocol. And all of the interviews have been conducted in English through Zoom or WhatsApp. The study's participants represent a really diverse range in terms of age, program of study, institution of study, time spent in the US, the location the students live or work, they have lived in the US, their marital status, family status, whether they have children or not, their professional work history, and many other variables. Some of the participants are still studying and living in the US, while others have already completed their studies in the US and have returned to the kingdom. In terms of data analysis, I'm utilizing in vivo coding to identify common themes among the data and inform my interpretation and findings. My analysis of the collected data is most definitely guided by my theoretical frameworks, which are related to Arab feminisms and Islamic feminisms, with a particular focus on feminist theorists who represent the Gulf region. Through my data analysis, although my data analysis is currently in progress, I have identified 2 themes that I believe can inform some preliminary findings. The first one is entrepreneurialism. So multiple participants are reporting significant and increased interest in pursuing entrepreneurial endeavors upon returning to the kingdom after their course of study in the US is over. What has been interesting to me is that their entrepreneurial interest is reported to be new, and it's not necessarily something they had in mind prior to their study abroad experience in the US. Also, this interest isn't necessarily directly tied to their course of study. So, for example, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised to hear that a graduate student in business would want to start her own company, but I was surprised to hear from a public health major who's planning to start up her own online health consulting company or business. Participants are also telling me that they're hearing about special programs and grants offered by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for female entrepreneurs. So this would be like business plan competitions and incubator programs specifically for women in business. I'm really interested in hearing from additional participants to learn more about this entrepreneurial interest and the reasons behind it, and what impact, if any, did their educational experiences in the US inform this interest. The second theme to come forward relates to civic engagement, and for some women participants in my study, possibly civic activism. Several participants have shared reflections on how their experience in the US has increased their interest in getting involved in a community outside their home or family life once they return to Saudi Arabia. And for some, this means joining a professional community. So one participant has said she's interested in joining a mentorship program for Saudi women in business, as an example. And then another has expressed interest in starting a professional organization for Saudi women who work in tech. Both women told me that professional and civic organizations specifically for women are not yet commonplace in Saudi Arabia, but they really want them to be. These types of groups these students became involved with and became dependent on when they were graduate students in the US. And they want Saudi women to be able to access this type of community and resource in other women as well. 2 additional participants, both who have been in the US for well over 10 years pursuing PhDs, and both who are unsure if their future plans will include a return to the kingdom, have expressed that they'd really like to do more to support activism related to women's rights in Saudi Arabia. But for them, this might mean supporting from afar for the time being. So one of these participants has expressed that she's gotten so accustomed to living independently in the US and that she's not sure if she will be able to go back and navigate the restrictions of the legal and cultural norms in the kingdom at this point in her life. And she's even less sure if she wants to her young daughter to have to navigate those norms and laws. The other participant is more definite in her desire not to return to the kingdom, at least not under the current regime. She was previously involved in the women's right to drive activism movement, and she knows firsthand, personally, the female activists who were arrested in 2017. So for her education abroad experience in the US has been an opportunity for self-exile in a way. And she says she knows other women that are in the same boat. She says, we're out here waiting and we're learning. That is a quote that she gave. So as this research is very much in progress, it's much too early to share any firm conclusions. However, as the research continues and as I move forward with data analysis, I will be looking further at the two themes of entrepreneurship and civic engagement and activism, and also any other themes as they arise. There are two specific questions that I'm already jotted down as things that I want to consider further as I move forward, and they're related to those two themes. One of them is looking deeper at the interest in entrepreneurialism and what that could mean. And then the other is looking closer at this idea of women's rights activists that are kind of utilizing education abroad as an opportunity for self-exile. I'm very interested in knowing or investigating how they might be practicing activism from outside the kingdom during their education abroad experience. So I want to thank you for your attention and listening to my presentation. I truly welcome any questions or feedback you might have for me as I move forward in my research, and my contact information is here on the slide. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we'll start with questions from the audience here, and then we'll move into the virtual space to see if there are other questions. I know that we just saw there was already some interaction around some of the questions asked, but let's start with the people here in the room. Do you have any questions or comments? All right, I don't have any questions. Yes, Alex.
I have a question for Natalie. So you mentioned the interest of why so many might be interested in entrepreneurship and whether their experience in education abroad might be driving that. I wonder if another explanation might be the financial situations of people who are able to go study abroad and then bring those skills back when they return. So do you have a sense of kind of the financial backgrounds of your informants and what their motivations in going abroad were to begin with?
Yes, thank you for the question. So most of the participants, actually all of the participants that I'm working with were recipients of the scholarship program. So their education was fully funded by the Saudi government. So theoretically, they can be from any socioeconomic background. Although my impression is that they're mainly, kind of upper socioeconomic, socially mobile family backgrounds. So yes, I do think that has socioeconomic background definitely has something to do with like which women are, feel the confidence and the family support and the kind of the resources to kind of get their businesses or entrepreneurial dreams kind of off the ground. So yes, great question.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, please.
So this is a question also for Natalie. So interestingly enough, I went to a Saudi-funded school for my whole life, and I'm not Saudi myself, but definitely interacted with the group. And it's interesting because the experience that my classmates had was that they actually wanted to go back, and they weren't actually very ambitious in terms of education compared to non-Saudi students. And so it's really interesting that you brought up that like the students that you had, it seemed that like their ambitions in higher education kind of correlated with them not wanting to go back to Saudi Arabia. And I'm wondering if you kind of looked into, I guess, maybe their educational ambitions. Like, was it something that they, I don't know where I'm really going with this question, but like, so did they know beforehand when they were getting the scholarships, for example, what they wanted to do for sure, or was it just like an opportunity that they just took?
Great question. So I've been working with and researching Saudi students for quite a few years now, and I've noticed some changes. So when I started kind of working with this group of female students, maybe like 8 or 10 years ago, when at the really like high point of the scholarship program, when it was kind of at its when it was most active. It's actually, there's fewer and fewer scholarships now, and they're more closely connected to companies and people who are already people who are already employed or in their professional career in Saudi Arabia. That's kind of the scholarship recipients now. So previously, I did experience what you're saying. So previously, there were just hundreds of scholarships. This is probably 8 or 10 years ago, at the peak of the scholarship, the Saudi's national scholarship program, and almost anybody who applied, was like had a very good chance of receiving the scholarship and being fully funded, and there were lots and lots of opportunities. And so at that point in time, I think the people I was meeting, the women I was meeting, there was like less of a kind of career path or kind of idea in mind. It was like, okay, let's go get this degree and see what will happen. But now, as the scholarship program has gotten more selective, the women that I'm working with are a little more established in their career path, may have already had professional experience, and so they are kind of further along in their kind of career path, or have like a firmer idea of what they're working with, trying to do. So these, are definitely graduate students. They're at the master's degree level or PhD level. But previously, I had worked with undergrad done some research with undergrad students who were scholarship recipients, and also English language learner students. And I would say that they were like a little less planned out, or had had a bit of a, not as much as a firm kind of goals in mind for what they wanted to do. They were a bit more open. So that would be my experience. I'm not sure exactly like when you were attending this school, if you yourself might be able to share like what generation or when this would have been.
Yeah, so it's about the same time you were just talking about. So 2013 was when I graduated. So that era was definitely, they were a lot more lax, I'll say that. So it's very interesting to see that trend. Also, I am from First Maryland, so I might stop by and say hi.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay, we'll connect. Thank you.
Right. So may I ask a question to Linda, and then we'll come back to you. So Linda, on Palestine and vocational training, there's this push by international donors too, that women and men, and to increase the employability in Palestine. There is this push for vocational training, for high tech and skills and so forth. At the same time, there is a pull or a push, I don't know, going back to agriculture and feeding yourself, sustainability, and being able to have your own sources of income that are generated by what the land gives you. And of course, whether this is the technology or the lack of, there are factors, of course, beyond just women, men, gender relations, such as occupation, did you, political situation, conflict, and so forth, and distance between Gaza and the West Bank, of course, and that separation between the two communities, did you detect any of those factors in your research? Is it something that you could report on in terms of the attitudes towards vocational training?
So thank you for the question. I am afraid that I may have to get back to you on the specifics of that. Narmeen, my colleague, is the one who really did the implementation of it. I know that if we, so I'm not sure about the extent to which the agricultural, even those skills are something that were that we had an effect on. But I'll try to get back to you once I get some more information on that. Sorry, I couldn't be more specific. Okay, thank you.
Very good question there. Well, we'll come back to you since I'm here already.
And then we have a question in the chat.
Okay,
my
so
question.
oh, that's your question. Okay.
Hi, thank you to Sarah and Dina. I really appreciate the presentation. So my question to you is, how do you envision the role of the teacher as Muraby in today's globalized world, driven by new ideologies of professionalism?
You hear her?
I could speak up a little bit. I'm not sure I could hear well.
Sure. Can you hear me now? Okay. So my question to Sarah and Dina, how do you envision the role of the teacher as Muraby in today's globalized world, driven by the liberal ideologies of professionalism, competition, and standardization? Even though the role of Muraby is more on tarbiyah rather than like education, which is focused more on ethics. So, thank you.
The question was in the Q&A function.
So I think I read the question in the chat, if it's the same. So I'll just have a quick note, and maybe Sarah could add also her insights. Now, this is a colossal challenge because neoliberal ideologies come hand in hand with high levels of control, accountability, standardized examinations, focusing more on efficiency of the educational setting to produce employees who are fit for the market. And even though with the advent of knowledge-based economy and the changing rhetoric of educational research and governance about that we need to focus on the 21st century skills and so on, it's still a highly controlled educational paradigm. Now, this is a completely different vision from the Islamic or from the educational paradigm that advocates that the teacher is a Muraby, as a facilitator, is someone who has to create this very deep and profound and emotional relationship with the students, more of a one-to-one journey of exploration and companionship and so on. And I honestly believe that after the COVID, there is a moment of disruption. So the educational institutions that are interested in creating this new, relationship between the Muraby or the teacher and the students as human beings, as individual human beings who have different needs and capacities. Now, this is the time to address these kind of challenges. So it's more of a personal challenge for teachers to embark on this journey, and more of also a governmental or an institutional challenge. But if there's a will, there's a way. So I think in this time and day, when we see that the educational system is dysfunctional and not able to address the challenges of our present age, yes, there is a moment, an opportunity for change. I don't know if Sarah has any additions as well.
Yeah, exactly. I would echo Dina that it requires a lot of devotion on a personal level and on a cultural level as well. So I echo Dina in what she said. Yeah, thank you.
Question for Linda again.
Or Linda.
Okay, Linda. The goal is for the women to have more to do more non-traditional careers in education. And so I was wondering, like, if they would want to do that, to what extent do they feel so constrained by the attitudes of men who are in their family or in companies? And so, are there any efforts within these vocational programs for life skill training to like affect or change the attitudes of men as well towards women's involvement in the workplace?
So that's a really good point. And that was the purpose of some of the gender videos and the posters, was to try to influence cultural ideas at the community level. And I think it was definitely just the first step. But I think that there's a real understanding that the kinds of changes that we're talking about, take time and are multifaceted. You have to, the influences that we have to influence the system at multiple levels. I think that there was some evidence from both the teachers and the students that there are some changes happening at, at the individual level, perhaps, and perhaps that learning culture level. But I think that the constraints are real, and you make a good point.
And the life skills training itself try to like reach out to a male and female student, try to like change that?
So the question was, did the life skills training try to reach out to both males and females to change that? And yes, the learning happened together, and males and females are working together, and the life skills training happened at that level. So yeah.
Hi, Amel. I wanted to thank you for your presentation, of course, and I wanted to ask you about the teacher practicum program that you have in the era of COVID and virtual education. How did you manage with the design that you have with the 3 phases to implement it with teachers in case of a virtual situation? How did you design this? And I'm asking this because I know that there are so many layers of challenges that might hinder virtual practicum, specifically in the Middle East. So I wanted to know more about how would you design it, and what kinds of challenges that might be if you would.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is indeed a very important question. And hi everybody. I'm so pleased to be with you today. Well, this is really important, as I said, and my presentation at the beginning was about the practicum and the challenges we faced during the pandemic crisis. And it was really a real challenge for us as teacher educators, and for trainees, and for host institutions to ensure the practicum, which is mandatory. Students cannot graduate and cannot get their certificate and cannot be hired if they do not do their training or their practicum. Taken the exceptional situation, of course, there were some adaptations, if you want. So the period of the training was reduced to the maximum. I remember that for 2 years, during the 2020 and 2021 academic years, there were only 2 phases, the alternate and the full-time. The observation phase was omitted, and it was included with the alternate phase. So the trainees had only 1 week of observation, and then they directly started their alternate phase. In addition, the situation at middle schools and higher schools was also difficult, because the time for sessions was reduced. We used to have 1-hour sessions for English. The time was reduced to 45 minutes and sometimes to 30 minutes. So trainees had really reduced chances to teach and to put into practice all what they have acquired in the academic training. That was a real challenge. And teachers, when they started teaching at their middle schools and high schools, were given another opportunity to go through training while doing while being teachers. So that was an in-service training. So we tried to manage, as I said, by reducing time, by reducing the period of the observation phase. This affected certainly the quality of the practicum and of the training, but we couldn't do it another way. Now, thank God, this year things are getting back to normal, and students have started their training 2 weeks ago, and they are in the observation phase, and hopefully things will go better in better conditions.
Thank you so much. And we have a question for our scholar from Turkey, Miss Kayadibi, are you with us? I see your picture.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, hi. So we have 2 questions for you. The first one is, it seems like you have 2 conclusions from your study. One is that there are 2 challenges. One is that money and scholarship, which is probably a very common problem for students in higher ed, and then you talked about language. Between the the time you prepared this presentation till today, do you have any other results you could share with us? Did you find any nuances or views regarding the social cultural adjustments, especially that you're talking about refugees, if I'm not mistaken, right? So they're coming from different areas like Syria and other places. Did you have any of those issues, challenges detected in your research from the time you prepared this presentation till now, or in your study in general? And then we'll hear from you, and then we'll hear the second question.
Thank you for your question. This research is still ongoing process, and it's based on mixed method, which includes quantitative and qualitative data collection. The challenges and the opportunities which I have mentioned was based on the literature review. The research conclusion, the findings is still not presented. What I presented through video was based on the literature review, and the questionnaire is submitted to my university for ethics committee. So that's why the findings will be presented during my full paper.
Okay, thank you. And I think there's another question. And we then I'll give it to you. Yeah.
Yes. Also, why is the Turkish government so eager and willing to give all this money to international students to come? And do you think that the government's goals for doing so are being met by their doing so?
I'm not clear with your question. Can you please type or repeat loudly, please?
Yeah, I'll repeat it. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Why is the Turkish government so interested in supporting international students?
Do you mean why Turkish government is supporting international students? Am I clear?
Yes, why are they interested in that?
Because they want to help mostly Muslim societies, because most of the countries, underdeveloped countries, they cannot afford to higher education. For example, let's take example of Southeast Asia. For higher education, they pay a lot of money. The government in Southeast Asia, for example, Malaysia, they provide government fund. It's called PTPTN. This is type of government fund, but then students, they have to pay back the scholarship. After they graduate, they face difficulty to find a job and they cannot pay back. So for the past years, according to statistics in Malaysia, those who got this PTPT and scholarship, they were in debt. So in that perspective, students actually become in a bad situation. Instead of like finding good job and getting better quality of life, they were in debt, fresh graduates, and so much debt. So they cannot afford the scholarship. In other example, I can give in Central Asia, higher education institutions, you have to pay a quite high amount of money. It's not free. So that's why, based my understanding and literature review, Turkey government tries to support Muslim countries to further their education, higher education.
Oh,
Sorry.
We have a question from my colleague Ji-sun, who had to leave, but is quite interested. I think this one is for Linda. And it said, were you able to explore further the reasons for the inconsistent result and the impact of training in gender non-traditional choices? Wonder whether the conception also included some of the legal and institutional barriers Palestinian refugees face beyond their familial and cultural context.
I can't talk about the contextualization of the life skills framework to the particular setting. I know that we've been working in West Bank Gaza for a long time, and the implementation is at a local level. All of the implementers are from Gaza, West Bank. So there's, you know, organic relationships with the relevant ministries and all of that. But in terms of the contextualization of the life skills framework, I don't, I can't talk to that. And the inconsistent results and the impact of training and gender and non-traditional choices, I think it wasn't that they were inconsistent, I think it was inconclusive. And so we just need a little bit more information about whether there are long-term effects or if it's just anecdotal from this. So.
Yes, I have a question about Turkey. How much money the government spent? Also, you told that because of the effort they cannot. That's why they bring the people from the Muslim countries. So far, I know they also bring the students from USA. Then, what's the reason behind it?
Thank you for your question. The first part of your question, how much money they spent, I will present this in my full paper, because I want to give the data for the yearly basis. And for the second part of your question, I couldn't hear clearly. Can you repeat, please?
The question is, do they bring students from the US to Turkey? They do that? So you have the answer.
Okay. I don't have it, I'm asking.
Oh, you're asking me.
I'm asking that Muslim countries, they cannot afford the tuition, that's why they bring the students.
Right.
But so far I understand that they also bring the students from the USA too. That is not matter of the money, maybe some other reason or something.
Okay, so, yeah, I see. So in your view, the reasoning behind bringing students, that it's only financial need, is not that accurate or completely accurate, because they also bring students from the US who could be wealthier. What's the question?
It's my question. That's not one.
So do you have a comment or response to this?
Yes, thank you for your comment.